Signore e signori, buonasera, good evening. Benvenuti alla Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò per la presentazione di Vicki Vasilopoulos e del suo film Man of the Cloth. This was one of these mornings in which I look into my closet and I say, non ho niente da mettermi. I have nothing to wear. That's normally what my mother says when she has to go out. And so I really felt sympathetic towards her, but I had good reasons this morning when I was picking the right tie. So I decided not to wear any suit and go sport. So the comparison with what you're going to see on the screen made by these master tailors and what I wear is not going to be so clashing. I've been following what Vicki has been doing for quite a while because I knew of her project, I knew that it was in the making. I was very curious about it, and I'm delighted that we have a chance to present it tonight here as part of our series, Addressing Style. We also have the fortune to have with us tonight two of the protagonists of Vicki's films that are the master tailors Nino Corvato and Genuardi. I would like to ask them to please stand so you can recognize them. And at the end of the screening, we'll ask them to join Professor Paulicelli and Vicki Vasilopoulos on the stage for the discussion. Some of you might remember that always as part of our series Addressing Style, we had the fortune to present another film, another documentary, this time made in Naples, called O Must. By Gianluca Migliarotti, an Italian director, who documented the Neapolitan tradition of tailoring. And I think it's great that we have the chance now to present Vicki's film because it basically talks about how these very quintessentially Italian tradition thrives, survives, flourishes in the US, thanks to people like our guests tonight. You're here to see the film. It's in 94 minutes. It's the full version that we have the fortune of showing to you tonight. Enjoy the film, and I will see you at the end for the discussion that is going to be moderated by Professor Paulicelli. Enjoy it. Please welcome to the stage Professor Eugenia Paulicelli, Vicki Vasilopoulos, and our special guests, Nino Corvato and Genuardi. Please welcome them.
Yes. I said congratulations. I remember meeting Vicki in 2002. We met the first time, and you know, yes, I remember because I was organizing a conference on Italian fashion at the Graduate Center, the City University of New York, and so we met in that occasion, and you started to talk about this wonderful project that is now completed. rightly so, Vicki, in the beginning of the documentary, she said something about the Italian tradition, the Italian history, sort of a DNA of Italian, craftsmanship as testimony of this incredible heritage. And I just wanted to show these two pictures. This is the very famous a portrait of a tailor, one of the first actually to be made, because at that time, portraiture was very fashionable, and princes, nobles, or wealthy people. But Giovan Battista Moroni, who is from Bergamo, depicted a tailor, and it's an incredible portrait because it really gives dignity to this craft. It's one of the first moments in which it's really embodying what you are doing, in this documentary. So to me, it was fantastic to connect, as you do. I mean, in your documentaries, the history is rich and it's fantastic. And there's just one other slide. This was the very first. It's a facsimile of the Libro del Sarto, the book of the tailor, that was published also in Italy in the second half of the 16th century, like the other portrait. And is a modern version of a catalog, what Centofante was showing you, similar. So if you open, this is a new, they remade, and it's a fantastic book because there are all these drawings and way, to construct it. So he was a way entrepreneur from Milano. Apparently this was a tailor from Milano who wanted to advertise his shop, his tailor shop. So I just wanted to link, to this very, very rich historical context that, Vicki's documentary really positioned, this art and this craft. So perhaps just as a simple question, how do you, if Vicki want to start, and maybe one of you, how do you feel after seeing this yourself, and where do you think we're going?
I never get tired of watching the film with audiences because it's so great to see everyone react. Joe and I were whispering, it's amazing how many times people laugh at unexpected moments. Yeah. And that's always a surprise to me, but it's great because that means they're really engaged with the scenes and the characters. And that's my favorite part, is really sharing it with audiences, and confirming for me that it has this wonderful, captivating human element. And everyone makes an emotional connection with what they're seeing on screen, which is, for me, the most important thing.
It's true.
Because this is a portrait of these artisans. It's not, yes, there's some history in there, but it's very subtle. Yeah. And it's not, meant to be didactic or some kind of history lesson. And, you can kind of bring your own experiences, your background to the film. If you love Italian culture, or maybe you're into fashion, or you're a tailoring aficionado, or it appeals to so many different, kinds of individuals. And that's been really gratifying for me.
But it's also what you start in the beginning, this idea of the passion for the craft, right? So that part of human experience.
That's the central theme.
Inside and also in the communication. Maybe if you would like to add something.
Do you want me to ask Vicki? Well, the first day when Vicki, she came to see me, and she said it was an idea she had about tailoring. I was astonished, and I was really the happiest man in the world. The reason why, because I felt finally somebody is coming around and do something about tailoring, which is an art, which is to an extinction right now anyway. And I hope it isn't, because my belief it is that I would like to continue teaching, if it's possible, really tailoring, if I have the time and the chance to do it, of course. Like I said in documentary there, that I hope I could live over 90, and then I started thinking about teaching also. So, but I must say that I have to thank Vicki for that great idea, a thought which it was fantastic, and it is. And it's beautiful because it's awakening really what is really a custom tailor. I mean, very few people know really what's going on into it. I might say something not really nicely, but tailoring is something whether you have or you don't. You, of course, yes. I mean, you could teach somebody, and for 20 years, he could never probably have the feeling to be a good tailor. Now, if you have the feeling to be a tailor, then you'll be the best tailor in the world, of course. It's into your body, into your spirit, really. And I still think that, well, I want to tell you a little story. Do I have the time to say? Yes. I have to tell you a little story that happened to me a few years ago, which is the most interesting part of my life, at the end of my journey, probably. I hope it's a long time. Anyway, I have a great customer. I mean, really today. No mention of name is not necessary. But I will mention the name only for one, which is the interest of my life, really. And the name is, I wish I could say that, I mean, really. Frank Stella is a famous painter.
Yes, yes.
It's a sculptor. It's the man which I love. He's my customer. But nonetheless, the point is this, that I'm making a few suits, few sport coats we try on. We at the end to finish it up. And he's looking himself in the mirror, and he says, I thought he was talking to me, but he was not, I guess. He said, this is an art. Actually, I respond and I said, Mr. Stella, you are the greatest artist there is today in the United States. Mine is just a tailoring finishing job. He looked at me, he didn't say a word. We finished, he took the suit, they take the suit. But after he left, I sat down and I said to myself, probably he's right. I mean, we're creating at the end of everything, we're creating something from the scratch. And like I said again, can I continue this?
Yes.
Or you want to interrupt? Just a few more, two more moments, I mean, really. So nonetheless, when I say a customer comes in and he chooses a piece of cloth, the suit to the book, to the sketchbook, the goods come in and I started cutting, like I said, in the documentary. And when I put on the piece of cloth on the table and I cut the suits, I make the pattern, I have an average, I will say, between 50 to 60 pieces, which is like a puzzle. You know, I mean, pants pieces and pieces for the jacket. When we started putting together in a tailor shop, when I have the first try-on, a second try-on, or the finish line, and at the end, the customer tried on, and I look in it, and I ask those questions. I said, do you like it? He said, I like, suppose, and 51% to say yes. And then I said, do you feel comfortable? Because that's the main part of a custom tailor is. After you were putting the suits on, or the jacket and the pants, you should feel comfortable, really, with it.
It should feel like you're not wearing anything.
Yeah.
Yes. And what happened is, when the customer is happy, and we said again, and I look in it, it makes you feel that you accomplish really something out of your life, really. I mean, from zero to the end, and that to me is an art. Thank you.
Thank you. But in fact, I think Vicki constructed also the film in a way, in different parts, as like the making of a suit, right. To show also the story behind, starting from like a blank page, for a writer or for a filmmaker, for a tailor, and then from that blank page or piece of cloth that start, writing and editing. So, but it's also a work of slow concentration. In fact, if you want to talk a little bit about that, also for different generation, for you, to go into something that is.
Yeah, I think I've seen the film probably 4 times now, and it always kind of gets me. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really get old to me. I know most of the people in the film, and I was just kind of thinking about like, why is that it's at the end of the film I sort of get this like surge of energy when I watch it, and I think that it sort of goes back to something I actually mentioned in the film, that one thing about working with Joe Centofanti was that what made my experience like that much more amazing, it wasn't that I was just learning practical skills. What made it so exciting was that his passion for the craft, like I said, was just contagious. I mean, if you talk to the guy for like 2 minutes about tailoring, you're into it. And you're just like, what are we doing? Like, let's do something, let's learn something, let's like, figure something out. And that was like such a motivation, even beyond just like, excelling at different skills and, comprehending different techniques and things. So, and also I find the same listening to Nino talk about his craft and his process. And I think that the film kind of, to me at least, captures that contagiousness of the passion. And that to me is really important because there is this need for perpetuating the craft, and it's such a blessing to have this like a memorialized film to sort of pass that energy on to me. I mean,
yeah, it's certain. I think there is and I want to know what you think about this. There is a lot of interest, first of all, on the suit in the industry now. I mean, in the suit, men's suit and menswear, much more than in the past, and also for younger generation. But there is also a sense of giving more space to craft economy, and not just this globalization and fast fashion. So there is something going on. I read about this. I read of different experiences, let's say in Italy, in the US, around the world. So what do you think of that? I mean, in terms of the future, I mean, is there a possibility you think that also films like this can have a reaction, among younger generation, to approach, I mean, this idea of the ethic of the work, which I think it's fantastic, from here. The idea that you work and you love your work and you have, it's not something that you can resolve in 1 hour, 1 day. It takes time.
Yeah, it's about patience and sacrifice. I think, as Joe alluded to in the film, there's a professor of sociology at St. John's University who said to me when I was in the production that there's been not that much of a respect for hand labor that's not industrial labor. And that was true for a long time. And I think that has shifted in very recent years because there's been this huge burgeoning interest in artisanal crafts. And we know New York and Brooklyn is like, the heart of that.
Made in New York, made in Brooklyn.
Yeah, it was kind of like maybe an offshoot of the heritage movement and all of that. And I think the economic kind of malaise that we went through in this country helped that because people had to kind of look at something more deeper They looked at things that had a more intrinsic value, that wasn't just, marketing driven. When I was a fashion editor, I would see these things that were supposed to have so-called status, clothing that had status, but you could argue whether it really had any intrinsic value. And I really wanted to show something that had its own kind of integrity, not only in the way it was made, but in the motivations of the people who were making it, and also in the personal relationships that were fostered while they were making, these beautiful hand-tailored suits. So it was really like a holistic approach. There's been a lot of interest in menswear. Part of it is because of this rise of all the blogs about clothing, I think. So it's had this democratizing effect. Now it's not just about reading what you should think or what's cool, what's great, or what's terrific. In a magazine, it's people can report their own things and share information amongst themselves. And I think that's terrific, because it shows that the younger generation does care and is interested, despite what some might have thought, The one caveat I would add is that on some of those forums, having a little bit of information can be a dangerous thing. And maybe Joe wants to comment on this. Everyone has an opinion on things. Oh, yeah, that's a great cut, that's a great shoulder, that's custom made, that's whatever, that's bespoke. That word is thrown around a lot. And it starts to lose its meaning because people don't really know what they're talking about oftentimes. I think they mean well, but, this kind of bench process that Nino practices and the way that Joe learned, it's very much a fading thing. And so you could see in the Brioni factory, they, decades ago, adopted an American-inspired serial production process because they saw that as the future. In fact, that was my first introduction to the craft. When I went to Italy, I was introduced to Cicchino, the master tailor there, and I found it so fascinating. I thought, this has got to be just a small part of a larger story. And that's essentially what started me on the journey of, researching what's happening here in America and how it all kind of fits together, Nino says that making a suit, with 50, 60 pieces is like a puzzle. Making the film was very much like a puzzle, too, in the way that it's constructed. I could have just focused on Nino, I guess, or maybe I could have just focused on Joe Centofanti, or maybe younger Joe's story, or just Cicchino's, but then I wanted to make more work for myself and my editor, and it took years to kind of figure out what the trajectory of the film was. And I think by showing you these different characters, it shows you both the past, the present, and the future of the craft.
It was interesting also that in Italy, there is sort of, the factory production, like Brioni started as a...
That's the irony.
In America, in the US, right, from Italian origin. I mean, you were born in Italy, but you were born in the US, although your last name sounds Italian, I don't know if you are. So are practicing more what he was. So I'm wondering if you want to add something about that, because it's the idea of Italy and what is it? Yeah.
I actually feel really strongly about what you're talking about, in the sense that I have Italian heritage that I'm very proud of, and honestly, I wish I had more time to investigate because, I think it'd be really interesting to go really deeper into that and see, who was in the past and if there's connections there. But, I'm the third generation American. My dad's a florist. My mom's a school teacher. I went to college. But something that's actually really important to me is I feel like in America, we've got to develop something different manufacturing-wise than what we have, because there was a time when things were really bustling here, and the rest of the world sort of looked up at us for the things we made. but I think that time is different now, and there's very few things being made here, and even more so, very few things of such a high caliber being made here. So part of what I feel responsible for is to sort of, you know, carry on and also develop more of this like high echelon manufacturing, and that aspect of the craft is really important to me, because I feel like that's important for the young people in our country and creative people here. I think, you know, anybody can do it. It's just we've got to sort of put our heads to it, and you know, that's, I think that's really important to focus on. So I hope that ties into what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, would you like to add something?
Yes.
On this?
I must thank Vicki, first of all, to the awakening of this documentary, because it's putting into the mind to the young people everything is possible to do. I mean, like I said before, it's an art which almost was forgotten. And then, I'm sorry. And then all of a sudden we find out through the documentary, Vicki, which she did a beautiful job, fantastic, I'm sure we all agree on that,
Thank you, Nino.
really beautiful. Young generation, young people, they are so interested. I mean, personally, I get called from Italy. They want to come to work for me for nothing, which is unbelievable, to learn the trade. Now, what this means is this. As you hear in the documentary also, for 2 years I've been looking for tailors, and I can get one. That means it's the end of the line, as far as I'm concerned, for the tailor. But if this awakening we call, I'm sorry, and the tailoring, it could be revival, as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's the interest also, I don't want to go in detail because it doesn't matter. A big company manufacturer, they've been calling to see if it could be open a school for teaching. Now, it's a beautiful trade, and I'm sure if a school would be open, it would be a lot of young people interested to learn. And I always said to Vicki, and she could tell, really, in a sense, that I'm the first one to start. I would devote some of my time for that. Also, I have other people which they've been calling me as a great tailors. They are interested also. So it means if this comes along, as I hope it will, probably we're going to have a school here in New York to teach the new younger generation. And I'm up to say that. Yes.
Perhaps we'll have some questions. We can take some questions from the audience.
Following on that. Actually, following on that subject, is there not interest within schools like the FITs of the world in tailoring? Are there no tracks for that in any of the fashion schools in the States?
You want me to answer that? Okay.
Joe, answer first.
You want to answer that?
I just had a quick answer anyway.
Right.
I know for some years FIT had a menswear department, and I have a colleague of mine is here that actually went through that program and, you know, enjoyed it and had a good experience. But correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they disband that?
Yeah, that's no longer. They have one class now, but there's no longer.
And why?
In menswear.
Why?
I don't know. It was but it's no longer there.
So I don't know if it's market trends. It can't be, because menswear is hotter than ever right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe it's just lack of people to teach.
That's what I suspect.
Maybe,
I would like to answer that question just for a few seconds.
Nino taught at Parsons School.
Yes. Why I teach at the Parsons School, it's been said already. Why in FIT you cannot get really what am I talking about as a tailors, as a Parsons FIT? We have a course which is 2 hours a night for 3 months. You do not teach a tailor.
yeah.
You teach only to make a part of something of a jacket or a pants. What I was talking about, to make it more specific and clear, to teach tailoring from A to Z. That's what I was talking about. That's what we're talking about school right away. Not anything against to that part of it, the school, FIT or Parson, which I did teach for so many years. But in 2 hours, for 3 months, 2 hours a week, believe me, I worked so hard that I stayed 4 hours in the school to teach, but yet I didn't accomplish much, honestly. It's very hard. You cannot teach a tailoring or draft a pattern through measurement like I was teaching at the Parson in 3 months, 2 hours, once a week. Almost impossible, okay? It's really hard. It's hard for a tailor who is a tailor to teach him to make a pattern in 3 months. Think about somebody who doesn't know to divide an inch into 4 parts, which is 1/4 of an inch. And I went through to that. I'm not really saying anything else to that. That's what I meant.
I think it's a really good point that Nino, Mr. Corvato makes. I have a young gentleman working with us now from New Zealand, and he's here to learn to be a tailor. So, and he works with us full time, 6 days a week, and he learns on the job. And honestly, that's the best way to learn this trade, is working side by side with professionals. You see clients every day. I mean, there's so much to it. There's the sewing, the drafting, all these practical things, but there's just the interaction with the customers.
The human.
I mean, Joe always said to me, you've got to know how to work with people, and you've got to be able to get along with the people that work for you, work with you, and you've also got to get along well with the customer. You have to be a people person, because you've got all different personalities coming in the door, and you can have someone that's a phenomenal sewer, but if they can't work with people and talk to people, they're never going to get out from behind the sewing machine and make a real impact that way. And not to say there's anything wrong with people that just sew, because I have phenomenal tailors that all they do all day is sew by hand and with the machines, and they're indisposable and highly, highly valuable, more and more every day, honestly.
Yeah, which is, I just wanted to add to Joe's that that's the main reason why I chose these characters. Nino, Joe, Kikino. Of course, they're superlative, world-class master tailors, but if they didn't have the personality, the charisma, the charm that they did, they certainly wouldn't work for a film, And I always like to tease Nino. I think if he wasn't a tailor, he probably would be a diplomat.
We have some more question. I think, was the gentleman there first, and then, yeah.
Do I need a mic?
No,
Maybe,
speak up, speak up.
yeah, speak up, I think.
So I've been in the bespoke business for the last 20 years. My father was a master tailor too. And when I came to this country, I went to FIT to study design. And I've been doing this trade since the last 8 years, and was an unknown word than bespoke. Like apprentice in UK for quite a while. But I have a question. I see that it's a dying art, no doubt. How do you feel about the computerization that's happening in this industry? I see that the software is becoming more sophisticated, and I feel that the skills that we all were taught as children, I started when I was 14 years old, when I was a tailor. I think a lot of it is becoming redundant in many ways, because you have applications where you can actually stand in front of the computer and have your measurements taken. So how do you feel about that in the future? And I think that's a very key part of the industry, to entice the youngsters who are so used to these iPhones, iPads, texting all the time, to bring that element in the industry, to make it more interesting for them to learn. I have an apprentice who comes to work with me twice a week, and like you said, it's very difficult to have their undivided attention, because they're texting, they're calling,
You've got to set a rule about that, right, sir.
It's only so much you can do, because it has to come from within. We were taught, the fear of God was put into us when we were being taught. We could not get away from what we were being taught, even going on. We respected our teachers. So how do you feel about that, I think, in the current situation?
I think some of our natural instinct would be like, well, technology, that's impure and stuff like that. But I think that there's always a place for progression and technology, finding more efficient ways to do things. But I think that, you know, what's really special about what we do and what we strive for, and it's something that I'm really not sure that technology can capture, is the nuance of what we do. It's all the sort of invisible things that really make the garment special. I mean, every jacket's got 2 sleeves, a back, 2 fronts, 2 sides, and a lining, so, and a collar. So, I mean, what makes one garment that much more special than, you know, something you bought at Barney's or Bergdorf's or, you know, wherever you shop? I think that it's all about the nuance, and that nuance is something that comes from, number 1, years and years of experience, and number 2, sort of a keen eye and a vision about like what that garment should look like and who this person is and how they want to present themselves. You know, a computer, like, not that I know of, can analyze those things. A computer can take really precise measurements, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have a guy somewhere behind a screen telling the computer what to do with those measurements. So I don't know if you're making it more complicated or easier, but I think that what I do know is that what we do is very nuanced, and that's what makes it so enjoyable, I think, because you know, you spend your lifetime sort of refining those things. So I hope that is an answer for you.
I think we have one more question, because then we have to. I know 3 questions. 1. I'm sorry. No. Who was first? I think.
I just wanted to say that essentially, sewing and making fabric, making clothes, you know, it's an ancient craft, and it's at the time of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, even up to the 19th century, people knew fabric. In the newspaper, the store would list the names of the fabrics, and every average person knew what fabric is. And that's a part of tailoring that cannot be taught at FIT 2 hours a week. The knowledge of what is a fine woolen, what is the difference, you know, even people now don't even know the difference. They couldn't even tell a woolen from a woolen and polyester blend, etc. So what is taught at FIT is modern, what is appropriate mass manufacturing. So we have a world of hundreds of millions of people, and they need clothing, and we have figured out ways to make fast clothing. However, the skills and the technology of making clothing is still the same. It's sewn in factories, right? But it's broken down. So FIT is taking a student and trying to give them skills to work in the modern industrial world. So that's the problem. But the skills of pattern drafting, knowing textiles.
Okay, but
that's
what is the question? Is it okay?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Please, Mr. Corvato.
Yes, Mr. Corvato.
I quite understood what you said, and is correct. I said before also that the conventional definition of a tailor is not just give a couple of stitches in a suit. That is naive complete to think of. Custom tailor is something which is an advancement undescribable, really, in a sense. We have to study, once we make a suit for a person, the physics, the posture, the way he stands, the way he walks, the way it's a million things to put together. And then also, the naive people today in the manufacture, which I might say so, and I know I could say that, I see suit made from a company, they are so silly and ridiculous. The reason is not because they mean to make it like that, but because they have no analogy what this means, a piece of cloth, the weight of the cloth, the weight of the canvas, which goes inside in a suit, and it reflects to the body itself when you finish the garment. This is the most important part in the tailor, which you just said that too. I mean, it cannot just be a designer and design a pattern or a style, and you think you're making a suit, it goes to the factory, what a beautiful suit. It's not. It doesn't feel comfortable, it's uncomfortable, and I don't know what this means. Custom tailor is detailed from A to Z, from the piece of clothes, the weight, what you put in together, not any piece of canvas, but it's got to be the weight to the compact of the cloth itself. If it's a silk, if it's a cotton, if it's a mixture with whatever, or polyester. But the point is the tailor has got to know what he's working with. And most, the manufacturer, they just put a thing together. It's not a very beautiful suit really sometimes. Thanks.
Well, what is
this is all, yes, very last.
Real quick, I think everybody's looking at this the wrong way. I think everybody is looking at why it's not working or why it won't work instead of looking at how it will work. And one thing that hasn't changed through history, exclusivity is a drug by itself. People don't know the nuances of making suits. So they don't know, you got a couple of generations that don't understand why a suit, what a custom suit is and why you should pay such and such for it. But one thing that I know that hip hop has done, it's made every entertainer want to be a designer. So like to me, this film, honestly sitting here, standing in the back looking, I looked and said, this film is a launch pad for people to know what making a suit is about. So to me, if you take this documentary and you put it in high schools or in colleges, where inner city kids who are attached to hip hop get to see it, trust me, you'll see a revival because people will look and see that, wait a minute. Now I know why this suit costs $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. Before, I could go look at Joseph A. Banks and I just see a suit and I see that's a suit. I don't know why I shouldn't pay $100 here and pay $20,000 here. But I'm telling you, you take this film, I think you made a great film that is a launch pad. If you market it to the right people, you can't market it to those of us who may know what a good suit is. You got to market it to those who don't know what it is. And they want that information, but you got to get it to them.
Thank you for your comment, and I think we can take it as a as also a good wish for the continuation of the success of Men of the Cloth. Vicki is still presenting it in colleges and schools and other venues. The sign-up sheet that she passed around before is exactly for that. So you will be informed about future presentations of the film. And as you know, the best form of publicity for these kind of things is word of mouth. Tell your friends that you've seen this great documentary.
Like us on Facebook. And if you want to, please write a couple of lines of reviews on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes. It really helps. Thank you so much.